Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I guess we are complete. Amy is not running the show today, so she asked me to do so. So let's see. I'm also happy that it's also recorded, so I can see myself failing at this multiple times, and it's gonna be fun. So hi, I think Harry, we never met, but we have a coffee chat tomorrow, so I guess we're gonna meet. I added some bullet points to the agenda for today. One is the what is it? The proposed OKR for the Q2, and there is the issue that I tagged hopefully the right group in last week, and I saw Scarbeck, you posted some comments on that. I didn't fully read it so far, and thank you also for adding elements for the retro. Also, the team split issue is something that is already known, and is something that probably I would like to address today and see if there are extra comments or maybe extra hints of what to do, especially in regards of naming. One of the most difficult tasks to do, find a name for a team or find a name for a variable. I think is going to be a challenge in any case. And I see, Myra, you also added something there that I still didn't see. So do we want to start for the point one from the retrospective? Do you have a chance to look at it?
Not yet. It was on my to-do list for today, but yeah, the security release happened in between.
Makes sense. So one question here, is it, can we share the screen during these recordings? So I learned.
Yes, you can. And this recording are private, right? They just send up in the internal drives.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is fine as long as you don't show up your passwords or something, or your memes, you know, like something private.
No, I was planning to show the issue to see if the project OKR, and so trying to understand if there was something there that we wanted to discuss or we want to do it async later on. Okay. So this is the proposal here that we discussed, I think, a few days back. So there were some around hiring that we have. Clearly, we have some hiring positions open, and we have some hiring positions open in the future. One of the other OKRs proposes to have successful team split. And the first one was to measure and track release management delays. I think it's something that I think if I remember correctly from historical reason, there was an effort to try to measure some things, but there was not enough data that was extracted from that. And probably this is kind of a step forward and also a step back at the same time. Try to see, okay, let's maybe aim to something that is slightly smaller and see if we can extract data from what we want to measure later on. And the second point and the last one that I was mentioning, a fully move to hands-off deployment without increasing mean time to deployment metrics. And I think this is where John had some remarks to do that I still honestly didn't address. Anyone else has anything to add there?
How late are we for defining OKRs? Because the quarter already started.
I think should be by this week.
Okay.
But I cannot swear because maybe it's mixed up with a lot of other information that they got during onboarding. So maybe this week is something else. It's not the OKR deadline.
What is the difference between this issue and the merge request that Amy opened some weeks ago, which also discussed the OKRs? What's different? I can search for that merge request.
Yeah, if you can search for that one, Myra, would be great because I probably didn't see that.
I think that one was about strategy. So that's kind of it's like the difference between strategy and tactics. So that strategy is kind of a more long-term goal for cascading down from department level, and they address not only what we want to do this quarter, but kind of in next quarter and by the end of the year and next year as well. And she was adding lines to that one. So there were, and those lines are in line with what are OKRs, what are the OKRs proposed here. So this one is for finalizing the decision for the not upcoming, but the current quarter, because it started. And I suppose because now we're going to move to ally.io, that this will be reflected into ally.io. And that one is more of an historical thing. So we want to, or not only historical, but also looking forward, because we want to do this and other things. And that's the difference.
Got it. Thank you.
Unless you feel free to add something that maybe I missed during your speak. Okay. If there are no extra comments on this issue, I think we can do it async. On the team split one, I think Myra and John, you saw that and you also got your comments on the issue. I don't know if you have anything to add there, any other concern that maybe is raised up later on, or if you have any suggestion also on the naming of the two teams, that would be really helpful. And Henry, yeah, I think you just came back today from holiday, so I'm not sure if you are up to speed to that, but there is a proposal to split the team in two parts. And one part is the proposal is online, more really focus on the release automation, and one part more focus on the Kubernetes side. And
yeah, I'm aware of that. I glanced over it, but didn't have time to really have deep thoughts about it yet. So I still need to think about it before I
sure.
any feedback to that one.
Sure. So yeah, if anything else we want to add to the issue itself, or there are extra concern, or anything on the naming. So there were some names that were proposed for both, and I think the one that were added in the issues was orchestration for the release automation team, and at the beginning was proposed foundation for the Kubernetes side, but then it seems that we have another product at GitLab that is called foundation. So to not be misleading, the other proposal were landscape, topology, ecosystem, and simply system. And I think, yeah, if there is any preference, otherwise it seems that I think Marin was saying that system sounds good to him, but I'm not sure if the team has any preference on the naming. I would say that no one has extra suggestions about it. I think it's also something that it's not engraved in stone. I think it's something we can also, I think, change it later. I mean, we don't like it or something like that. I don't think it's going to be big, unless we want to change it in 1 year. Probably maybe it's going to be a bit different, and people is going to be lost with that.
The only suggestions I have for team names is to go something completely different. I don't like foundations or orchestration. I'd rather have like Team Vanilla or Team Chocolate because I eat ice cream. But that's probably not going to be found acceptable either. So I did want to suggest something like that.
Okay, I'm gonna add it to the. Do you want to add a comment on the issue, Skyback, or shall I add a comment for you?
I do not, because I know it's going to get turned down.
Okay, maybe I'm gonna add a comment to the issue and see. I'm new, so I can do these kind of things, you know, and so let's see how it goes.
Perhaps you can just ping everyone like in a comment
Yeah.
because we are missing some people in case anyone else has some ideas. We can
Sounds
discuss
good.
this async.
Sounds good. Thank you. Myra, okay, I'm gonna open your issue. I don't know what it's about, so.
Yeah, it is a merge request that I noticed it is included in this security release, and it is basically going to limit the pipeline schedules to the person that owns the pipeline schedules. And in our case, it is only going to affect us once the major release is released, and the major release is published, and our OPS instance is updated with this one. And it is basically going to affect the pipeline schedules because our pipeline schedules are owned by the release tools bot. So that means that we either need to sign in as the release tools bot to edit it, or we need to own that, our own users need to own that so we can edit it.
Is it about the owner of the pipeline or the owner of the project?
I understand it is the owner of the pipeline schedule. I haven't taken a deep look, but I also noticed the team is kind of trying to implement this in another way because they notice it is going to be disturbing for some people. So there might be a solution before the 22nd.
Yeah, I misread it. So my first comment is not entirely accurate because I understood that only owners of the project can alter pipeline schedule. So, and this is not correct because I'm rereading the issue that you linked. So your reading is correct, Myra. So because we are maintainers and not owners on OPS. So this would kind of break all of our chat ops for posing things and things like that because they do this through API. But this is not true. So okay, but I think we may upgrade earlier because when today we release the security release, because you mentioned this is part of the security release, isn't it? So I suppose we install security updates on OPS. So
do we? I don't know.
Yeah, we run daily. We update daily the packages.
It'll happen overnight. So when the security release gets completed and you go in and re-enable the oh, I'm on the wrong instance. Never mind. No, but yeah, ops does get upgraded overnight.
Overnight, yeah, just regular packages. So we release the security fixes, then it's a package bump, and overnight it gets updated. So tomorrow it may not work.
Oh, that is gonna be annoying then. Okay. Anyway, the workaround is either change the ownership of the pipeline schedule or sign in as the release tools bot if we want to edit the pipeline schedule. Or to click it. I don't know if we want to play it. If we want to play it, I don't know if we can without being the actual owner.
I am afraid that for the tagging job, if we own it, this will then trigger that. So because we trigger child pipelines, they are triggered by the owner of the pipeline itself. So those who own the scheduled job will be by default the owner of all the cascading jobs. So right now, I mean, we promote manually. So when, well,
But the tagging is done by release tools, right? Because it is automated. It is not.
yeah, but it's
by
a
us.
schedule.
Yeah, but as long as it is done by the release tools.
Yeah,
it
but
should
if
be
you
fine.
want to change something like the schedule
Oh,
itself,
yeah, it should. Yeah, that is
then
the
you own
problem,
it,
that...
and then looks like every single tag pipeline is owned.
Oh, got it. Yeah, I guess the solution is to actually
No, but
sign
this is
in
not,
as the release tools, Bob.
I'm not even sure about this because the pipeline, Jesus, this is complex. The pipeline itself, the scheduled pipeline itself is tagging release tools if something changed. And then there is a tag pipeline that is running. So because, yeah, so because the tag itself is generated with the API from the release tools bot token, then the pipeline is owned by the bot, regardless of the pipeline schedule, because that's the actual coordinated pipeline. But yeah, I mean, we can test this tomorrow, Myra. Let's make a note for the. I have a busy morning tomorrow, but I will try to test this, just posing and unposing the auto deploy altogether to see if it's actually changing the pipelines, if disabling it or not.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks for raising this.
You're both release managers, right, in this rotation?
We should also probably test the dev instance because we pause the nightly builds during a security release. So hypothetically, the dev instance will get upgraded as well, and then we won't be able to pause or unpause the nightly builds because they're currently owned by Marin.
Yeah, but because we are in security release, they are supposed to be paused. So the nightly packages do not contain security fixes. So we can't test this until, yeah, tomorrow as well. Good point. Thank
you. I hope I caught enough details. I got lost a couple of times, I'm honest. But I think if there is something that doesn't make sense in the notes that I took, please feel free to change it. Are you usually also looking at the MTT metrics every Monday during this meeting? Or something that release managers?
Yeah, it's kind of the release manager corners for them to complain and vent about previously.
Okay. Then Myra, let's feel free.
Do you want to start, Myra?
If I'm going to vent, I don't want it to be recorded.
Okay, we can do it at the end.
Yeah, I also don't have anything to rant about it, I guess.
I
don't
have.
Remember. Okay.
I do have something which I think is important for the team in general. And maybe I'm also looking for your opinion on this, Myra, because it involved both of us. It's the Elasticsearch client update. So just gonna give a brief overview. So last week, we were asked to deploy in isolation a merge request. This merge request was bumping the Elasticsearch gem. Because the Elasticsearch was dropping some kind of support for something. And so they want to be extra sure that the things was not breaking stuff. And they wanted to do manual testing on staging graph, staging, production canary, a lot of things. Now, just what I want to point out here is that this was during the security release window, which kind of adds stress to the whole process itself. But moreover, this thing, I think, took almost 24 hours of continued work because I had to start very early in my morning to pause everything. So autodeploy was in pause state. Then I had to go through synchronization of all the environment during my morning, and this was kind of delayed by an outage that happened in the morning before I woke up, and this delayed a change request from the CI decomposition. So cascading failures on top of each other. So when we reached the point when we were able to test these things, we have to have the usual pipeline are not ready, and then we have to merge, and then we have to pick, and master was broken, and blah, blah, blah things. So I ended up my day that we were still testing those things. The manual test was supposed to take around 2 hours. And well, my point is that the plan was not clear. So they were just asking us, can we deploy this in isolation? And to me, it was more about, yes, we can pause, deploy the thing, we do the QA, and then it's done. And in developers' head, this was more about, we want to stop everything, no promotion of any sort. We had to cancel production canary deployment as well, because they want to actually go into the machine and run some testing. Yeah, I don't know, if we start asking this sort of things, we will just have trouble shipping changes. So we need to figure out a better way for handling this type of situation. Myra, what's your thought on this? Because I don't know when you ended up with the change.
Yeah, actually, I think the manager or the author of the merge request pinged me to kind of assess if the merge request could be deployed in isolation. And I have little understanding of how Elasticsearch works. So I started to asking questions about what is your plan to deployment? What metrics are you going to look for? What should we do if something goes wrong? And the answers that I received did not satisfy me. So I was a bit worried about the deployment of that merge request. And then along with the team, we decided, okay, we are going to deploy this in isolation. But the idea that they had was very far away from the deployment we actually use. They told me, we are going to test this in staging. And then if everything is okay, we are going to deploy it to production. And I was like, yeah, that is not going to work, because we deploy it like in the same, almost at the same time. And it doesn't work like that. So on my side, it always shocks me how far away the developers are from our release and deployment process. And even though we announced this change, even though we publish it in different Slack channels, we create an announcement, we put it on the Engineering Week in review, I guess people don't like to read. And I'm not sure how to fix that, or if it's possible to fix that. And yes, it took a lot of time. After Alessio handed to me, I think it took 4 hours after that, so I could redeploy everything and restart everything. And I guess on the good side, it was an easy upgrade, and I'm going to quote easy upgrade, because it took a lot of time, but we didn't face any production incident caused by it.
I wonder if we should start treating this type of thing similar to backport requests, because this is so difficult for us, and we had changes in our pipeline that some persons were unaware of. There's still some education that still needs to be passed around to some people. And then we've got some coordination that needs to occur on our side, similar to the amount of coordination that needs to happen with a backport request to make sure everything is good to go and, you know, we're all on the same page. I wonder if we need to consider building a process or procedure for that, because I feel like this particular request, like maybe it would have been beneficial if we had a different method of deploying it. That way it could be tested in isolation and staging without ever having to go into production until they know things are okay, which also means we need to make sure that, like, we would have to take into consideration using the old CI pipeline method for that matter, which is kind of out of the question because we don't support going backwards with that method, but that would have been easier for them to probably have a better idea as to how and when they could test.
Well, we have staging ref. The problem is that they couldn't test it on staging Canary because they were relying on Sidekick, and Sidekick is not part of Canary, so they needed to build the whole environment for it. So they tried to test it on staging ref, But then again, it needed to be tested isolated without any other change. So I think the back pull request, it's something, a process like that, it's something that we could consider. The only problem is that back pull request can be accepted or rejected by us. In this case, we need to accept it because it is an upgrade that needs to happen at some point at GitLab. So,
but at least when a request comes in, we'll have the ability to schedule it. You know, they could fill in all the details as necessary and could be like, okay, now that we've got our details, we'll schedule this at some point in time. Bear with us or something.
Skarbek, I think that the right tool here was a change request. So to me, going through this, the missing part, what they didn't talk about all the moving parts and the fact that this thing was taking hostage the whole systems for a long period of time. And I have to say that this was a specific change that was impossible to ship with feature flags. I mean, hard, close to impossible to ship with feature flags because it's a dependency upgrade. So you can't really feature flag it. I mean, probably the engineering effort to make it load both gems and switch at runtime based on some environment variable is more than just writing a change request that just explain what you want to do. Because what happened was that I was told, we are going to be here around 12 UTC so that we can start. So if you can prepare the environment ahead of time, we will run our tests. And when they show up online, I was saying, okay, what do you need to test? This was supposed to happen before, because then I was trying to match their expectation with how deployments work. And this should not happen when everything is already on pause for several hours. And we also have to say that this was specifically because this is a major release and was their only chance to ship a breaking change. And so many things were competing to this situation, but probably the change request is the safest. Also because I had to stop 2 other change requests from happening in that window because no one from reliability was aware of something that big happening.
I want to ask, was the reason to request to deploy this in isolation because we were not sure of what would happen, or because we knew that we need to do it because else something would break?
They had to validate something. They did a lot of validation locally with VMs, whatever.
Yeah, but why do we need to do this in isolation then? Why can't we just slip in other MRs at the same time? Because this is how our normal deployment works, and they still should be able to test if things are working or not, right? So I think this is often abused just to be on the cautious side, like with the gRPC GEM update, I think, that we had last time in isolation, so that we feel not really safe about what would happen, but that could have been catched with proper testing in a staging environment, for instance, beforehand, and it absolutely wouldn't need to be deployed in isolation just to test if everything still works. It's just, for developers, I think, nice to be on the cautious side, but often totally unnecessary doing this isolation deployment. I think we should somehow document that this isn't meant to, get away from testing things and to be extra safe, because this is just too much effort and doesn't bring really a lot of wins just to, prevent other MRs maybe also adding some problems maybe that are not related to this. So I think for the gRPC update and also for this, maybe it wouldn't have worth to do it in isolation. We should just have done it the usual way, maybe stop after staging to just test and then go on if you feel it works, right?
Yeah, I think they were just trying to skip the blaming part when something goes wrong and they have to figure out if it was their change or something else.
Yeah,
but you're right. It's unreasonable at this scale.
All MRs that we are doing could break something, and so everybody needs to be taking over responsibility then and try to find out what it is and if he broke something. And if you feel beforehand that you are very unsure about something, that's no reason to treat it differently, I think. Just test it instead of exclude all other changes, right?
Yeah, I think what was missing here, it was the what could go wrong section where we say, is the type of failure from something broken from this merge request big enough to demand a deployment in isolation, because probably that's the thing. So because, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you are not really sure if this is completely working, or you want to play extra safe and you don't really understand the amount of work that you're putting on top of others and the delay that you are putting on the release process. But in any case, if someone wants to do some testing because they needed to schedule some job to verify something on an environment. So if you need to do something like this that require you to get into the machine, this requires a change request, in my view.
I think we are over time, but are we all okay to still proceed?
Anything else to add on the recording? So, no, I want to find a way to stop the recording.
Maybe you're not the owner.
I
Who's the owner?
It's Amy, I think.
But we
Oh,
should
I